Welcome to all of you for sparing the time to be present here for this book launch. This is a rather unique event because if my memory serves me right, we have never launched our autobiography. We have launched many books, but we have never, as far as I can remember, we have not launched an autobiography because we launch books that are written by our research scholars or someone we have commissioned to do a particular study. But we are very happy to launch this book for several reasons. One, the author is a very unique person. Second, the subject is a very unique subject. Number three, it's the background is a country which is also very unique. Let me explain. Binod Chaudhary has risen. In fact, there's an article in the Economist which says scaling the Everest and scaling the commercial world, reaching the top, both are about equally difficult. But he has done it. He has reached the top in spite of tremendous odds. But he has learned how to manage the difficulties and he has risen to the top. He is a businessman, he is a philanthropist with interest in healthcare, eye care, youth improvement, a whole range of things. And he has done it extremely well. The third thing about the uniqueness of the background is it is based in Nepal. We have had Nepali scholars with us, and they have written books, articles on Nepal. But what Mr. Binod Chaudhary brings out is that how do you manage the situation in Nepal in being a businessman, not as a scholar, not looking at it from outside, but as a practitioner. Nepal is a very important country because Nepal, it sits between two of the largest countries in the world, China and India. And Nepal is always under some stress how to manage these two gigantic neighbors. One of the things that ISAS wants to do is to try and see. ISAS, our concentration is on the larger countries of South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Now we want to start with the reason why, one of the reasons why we have gone into this book, the launching of this book, is to introduce the smaller countries, and Nepal is the most successful of the smaller countries. We feel that we should devote some of our resources to the study of the smaller nations of South Asia, and we are going to do this. But of course we need resources and we will be looking around for those resources. This is important because Nepal will play a very key role in the relationship in that part of the world. Nepal is a landlocked country which is very dependent on India for access to the sea. But Nepal has no restrictions on the use of airspace. And one would think that Nepal would build up its air connectivity in such a way that it can overcome its problems on having access through the sea. Because it doesn't mean that you don't have, there are a lot of landlocked countries that thrive in spite of the fact that they don't have a port. So Nepal will have to do that. Nepal has got political problems. Nobody knows this better than Binod Chaudhary. He was a member of the Constituent Assembly. He is, as he writes, he puts it in his book, he is hobnobbed with all the big wigs in politics, in commerce, in the royalty and so on. So he knows him. The book that we are launching, I think, gives you a very good idea of how Nepal survives. how a man who is determined to go and get to the top can get to the top. But I would urge you to use the question and answer period to probe as much as you want. I know Mr. Chaudhary is a very articulate man. I first met him 6-7 years ago when he came with the Nepali trade delegation. And then I invited him to have a presentation at ISAS. And we benefited a great deal on that. Subsequently, we invited him for the South Asian Diaspora Conference in 2011. He came up with a gem of an idea, which gained immediate traction. He said, Singapore should be the Davos of South Asia. Even today, people who don't remember Mr. Chaudhary's name come to me and say that Nepalese gentleman's idea of Singapore being the Davos of South Asia is an excellent one. You haven't done too much about it. You should do it. So, an idea gained traction. He came again in 2013. We have the South Asian Diaspora Conference in July on the 18th and 19th, and we have invited Mr. Chaudhary to be a speaker, and he has agreed that he will come, in spite of the fact that he has got to go to China as well. He has become multinational. His main business is noodles. I'm told by rumors, through rumors, I hear that he actually tasted the noodles first in Thailand, and then he started this business. And now he sells 2 billion packs of noodles per year. Now he's expanding. He is going to build 7 factories in India. He's building in South Africa, Saudi Arabia, India, Serbia, and a few other places. He has got hotels, he has got a safari park, you name it, he has got it. So he's into many things, but he has successfully managed this. He and his 3 sons and his other relatives. We wish him well. We hope he grows. The Economist article, one of the things that it highlights is the fact that he is totally honest in revealing how he got to the top. And he's not shy about it, he's not defensive, he just says it as it is. And I think that attracted the Economist to write a 1-page article on Binod Chaudhary. I would not want to delay further because you're going to have a panel discussion, and I think that's the best part, not my speech, but the question and answer will be the best part of this proceedings. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy this session, and you decide to go to Kathmandu. It's not totally recovered from the earthquake. Mr. Chaudhary has built a lot of low-cost houses and donated free to the needy. So you will see many things in Kathmandu. At every corner you've got something that reminds you of Binod Chaudhary. So it is an important book. It's an important session. Please make the best of it. Thank you very much.
I would now like to invite the following distinguished speakers for our panel discussion. To start with, Dr. Narayan, who, in addition to being a senior research fellow at the Institute of South Asian Studies, is also a former economic advisor to the Prime Minister of India. Our celebrated author, Mr. Binod Chaudhary, and Mr. Michael Perlis, CEO of Forbes Media.
Ambassador Pillai, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity of moderating this discussion between, I would say, 2 very, very eminent people. You already heard Ambassador Pillai introduce Dr. Binod Chaudhary. So I will not add on to that, but we will hear from him much more about himself, about his book, and about what he thinks about Nepal. From SoftBank Group's former subsidiary, where he was president and CEO until it stayed in 2000. Earlier in his career, he has served as president at TVSM, president of the Playboy Publishing Group, and chairman and CEO of IDG Peterborough. He began his career in media as the co-founder of the New England publications in Camden, Maine. He currently serves on the board of BuzzFeed, and is a board observer of Voodoo Box. He served on the board and was chairman of the Associated Content before it sailed to Yahoo. Previous board observer positions included Huffington Post and Kick-Ass. He is a graduate of Syracuse University. He also serves on the board of the Newhouse School of Public Communications and is a trustee of Outboard Media, West Media. So we have two very eminent people here. And the way I would like to start is to take up from Ambassador Pillai's closing remarks and try to ask first Mr. Chaudhary the particular point about what it is like to be an entrepreneur in Nepal. Of course, I think even in the book and otherwise you have mentioned that it is important to have good contacts and good knowledge of the politics there. But I think in saying that you are being a little, what shall I say, you are not putting forward the opportunities and entrepreneurship that you brought to the table. Getting a license is just the first step. Making that happen and developing it into a multinational industry comes only from your own efforts and your own capabilities. So we would like to hear, and which is very well laid out in your book, we would like to hear how exactly this journey happened, what exactly you brought on the table, which was not brought on the table by many of your colleagues. I think that would be the opening, and where I would like Mr. Perlis to come in is, how did he first notice Mr. Chaudhary? What exactly brought Forbes to pay attention to him? Why was it a story which was worth telling to the whole world? And I think we can take it up from there, Mr. Chaudhary.
Put on record my sincere gratitude to Ambassador Gopinath, Pillai and the entire ISAS team for giving me this honor and opportunity to not only share what I call my story, but also in this forum in Singapore. I'm equally grateful to my friend Mike and Will from Forbes Singapore who are here, and many others who played an important part as friends, as business associates, as part of the family in my life, in this entire journey. I see many faces. It is very difficult to recognize everyone, but my gratitudes. Well, from where I should begin to address Dr. Narayan's question. I think it takes me back to the time when I was preparing to go to India to become a chartered accountant at the age of 18. I was a good student. And there was this, particular charm about Mumbai, Bollywood, that most South Asians have. Those days it was seen as a city which was budging, happening, and like everybody else, or many, I was trying to persuade my father that, why don't you send me to become a chartered accountant? And chartered accountants in our part of the world used to be considered they used to be considered as better sort of managers of businesses, with eyes on the bottom line. Things have changed since then. They've been reduced down to accountants now. But while I was preparing to do that, my father suffered a serious heart ailment, and overnight my life changed. I had to forget about pursuing my education in India and settle down back in Kathmandu. It was a small organization. My father had already laid down a strong foundation for the family to take off from. I always call him a visionary, a man with tremendous sort of drive as an entrepreneur, despite the fact that it was a situation in Nepal those days where opportunities were very limited. and somebody who gave us the biggest inheritance of our life, that is credibility. And we, our family have always tried to take that forward. I was 18 here trying to sort of compete with the peer group of my father, who were all in the age bracket of 45, 50. Given my earlier background of, as a youth, including running a discotheque of the country, the first discotheque of Nepal, Kathmandu, nobody would take me seriously. People, the society had more or less written me off that this guy is gone. And so I started with that kind of a hurdle first. Over the years, I've recognized that, if you have that zeal, that sense of commitment in you, these hurdles only make you stronger. The more the path started to become difficult, the more stronger it made me, perhaps. Yeah. There were also many battles that I had to face subsequently in our apex body, the chambers. Santoshji, my cousin, is here. He's witnessed many of that. My father became part of the team who got defeated, and that had a serious implication in his health, I thought. And Nepal's somehow politics never ceases to give surprises. In the last 65 years' time, Nepal has seen more than 50 governments. The swing of the politics has moved from the Rana regime to a people's-led democracy to a virtual dictatorship in the form of a panchayat system which lasted for more than 30 years to an armed revolution led by Maoists which lasted for 14 years and killed somehow on record it's 21,000, probably much more, to once again the kings take over and today the newest republic of the world. That's the kind of a situation. Last 25 years post reinstatement of the democracy, we've seen 22 governments. The average lifespan of a government in Nepal is less than a year. And sadly, as you know, that when you have a fluid politics, everything else gets politicized. The bureaucracy is nowhere like in India or in Pakistan, which was trained by the British. Our bureaucracy is equally politicized. Each party comes and they want to bring in their people in the bureaucracy. That aggravates the problems of the governance even more. However, Nepal is at the same time a country full of natural resources. There is nothing that I can think of which is not there. Huge markets like India and China, if we know how to handle our businesses well, production of goods or services. Huge natural resources, the largest potential to generate power, hydropower, more than 100,000 megawatts. 2/3 of the country is all green, full of valuable medicinal herbs to all kinds of forestry that you can think of. Birthplace of Buddha, the Hindus' ultimate shrine like Pashupatinath. See, 5 of the world's tallest peaks, 5 of the 8 world's tallest peak, which makes Nepal the most sought after place for expedition and trekking. I can go on and on and on about Nepal. But when God may give you all the resources at his disposal, but if you don't know how to manage it, what happens is something which is happening in Nepal. But by the same time, there is something beyond, I think, the human caliber. Nepal has always been somehow, the people, the private enterprise, the private sector have always risen to the occasion and created either some products or certain, let's say, opportunities which has kept the economy going. We've still grown at about 4.5%, including the times of the insurgency.
Today, Nepal gets $6 billion by way of migrant workers remittance, which is 1.5 times of the country's national budget. The problem that we have as a country is we don't know how to spend. We have 100,000 megawatts of power generating capability, but we import power from India. We have 16 hours long power shortage, sometimes during dry seasons. Now, why am I going into the details of a country? You know, the reason is very simple, that in an environment like this, on one hand, it makes life very difficult because politics, lack of good governance, consistency on one hand makes the policies very fluid, implementation very fluid, unpredictability. Each government is all out to undo the policies done by the previous government. I always give an example that doing business in many respects in a country like Nepal, and they're not only Nepal, I mean, we deal in almost all the South Asian countries. It's like getting down to the tennis court with a tennis racket in your hand and suddenly facing a cricket ball. So you got to have your reflexes right. You got to be prepared to face any eventuality. You got to be clear about your direction, in my opinion. I think you got to be, to that extent, many times more resilient, many times more alert, many times more bold, courageous. And these things do happen, you know, and I think that not only me, there are many others who've demonstrated successful enterprise of the country. 70% of the investment in the country comes from Nepal. But I mean, in my case, I mean, you know, the destiny has always hounded me to push me into difficult environment. So Nepal was my training ground, as a matter of fact. Nepal has been always, after working for about 20 years in Nepal, we wanted to pursue our objectives of creating the first multinational out of Nepal. And the place which was my natural choice was Northeast India. Assam and Mizoram and Nagaland and all these Meghalaya, the part of India which has perpetually been in insurgencies ever since independence, till date. Some rigid problems have been resolved, but there's still a lot to be done. That was a natural extension of my market. Okay, we had started selling YY 35 years ago. Even in the eyes and the minds of the Indian corporates, Northeast is like a different country. Not many like to go, and you know, there is a perception problem. And likewise, I had to, again, the circumstances, destiny led me to Sri Lanka at a time when the 6 aircrafts at the Colombo airport were bombed. And nobody wanted to touch Sri Lanka, not even Sri Lankans. The first investment we made with the Taj was in Taj Samudra Hotel, which is by far the best hotel today. But 20 years ago, nobody wanted to touch. Nobody wanted to put in money. So I guess, now to cut the long story short, and the long story is there in the book anyway, I think that's the reason we all are here. I think it is a matter of knowing your limitations. You know, when you come from, first of all, my family is 135 years ago, we come from Rajasthan. Okay? Somewhat people who leave their place of origin and have to find new destinies, new destinations, new territories for survival, for existence. I think they start with that sense of determination, because they know that life is not going to be easy. They don't travel with money like today, that they don't bring in, my grandfather did not bring in FDI, you know, to Nepal. He came empty-handed. I mean, it's like the Jews. It's like that's another example. I mean, you know, they've gone in many different parts of the world, but you know, I mean, I think they've made a mark for themselves. So a lot of people ask me that why is it that you're the community that you belong to, Marwadis, do so well in business? This is the answer I give them. I don't say that, I don't think it's anything else. It's existence. It's fight for existence, and it fights for doing better. It's a realization of the fact that I have to go back. I have to do something for what I've come here. There are a lot of people who are dependent on me, who are counting on me. So it's all about, I think, preparing yourself, having that extra bit of hunger and determination. No matter what, the journey is not going to stop. You know, sometimes when the policies and its implementation becomes too difficult, okay, then there are only two options you've got. Either you give up because just somebody is not, you know, the governments are not being visionary enough or cooperative enough or positive minded enough, or you lobby to change, and if you can't change, then jump. Don't abandon your journey. As simple as that, because if you're convinced, if your conscience is clear, and if you're convinced that that's the right thing to do, the whole world has done it, just because of a problem of that, because somebody has a closed mindset, I'm not going to abandon my journey. You know, I'm saying this in the context of when I wanted to start the first multinational. It was a time when Nepalese were not allowed to invest anything outside Nepal. Okay, because of the foreign exchange regulation. Okay, forget about carrying money. Even if you wanted to go out and create a pool of partners and friends who believe in you and start an enterprise, still, if you are caught with foreign exchange in your pocket when coming back, even $100, right? It is a criminal offense. Can you believe it? I mean, you know, that's the kind of a situation. But there are ways and means. But there was also a provision that a non-resident Nepali could do that. So I had to literally stay 183 days a year outside Nepal to pursue my dream of creating this enterprise into a multinational. And I chose Singapore. So I have a huge emotional and sentimental attachment with Singapore. In 1990, I first opened our companies. At the time we used to call it the Sinovation. Okay, bought an apartment in International Plaza, had a small tiny office. Kamalji must be here somewhere who helped me to set it all together. And started the journey right from here. And to me, I have two countries that I particularly like to mention, which has helped me tremendously in my life. And I was talking to these young children outside, the students, that I never went to a big B school in my life. To me, my big B school was Japan. I started going there at the age of 18. The work culture they taught me, the teamwork they taught me, what I saw, how they articulate an issue, how they work in a team, what kind of a preparatory groundwork they do, fantastic. I think I couldn't have been better trained than to have been trained. And subsequently Korea, the regional CEO of LG is here. I think they inherited, they carry the same work culture. And then subsequently Singapore. Singapore is a living university. You go anywhere, you learn something. You know, you learn something in your daily life. How to conduct yourself, how to do the ethical business practices, how to survive without much of natural resources or a huge sort of a natural resources at your command. So these have been some of the, I would say that destiny has given me on one hand certain constraints we had to start with, on the other hand these were the opportunities which we were able to build on. Okay.
Truth in advertising here, I have to tell you all that I'm sitting here as the CEO of Forbes, but Binod is a very dear friend of mine. And if you want to know what attracts people to Binod, just look at that smile. I mean, we all know in Nepal you greet people and say namaste. I think roughly it means I see the God within you. And apart from all of his extraordinary accomplishments, I think his incredible skill is a people skill. And he sees the God within every person that he meets. He sees their potential. He has a disarming way of creating intimacy and respect in a way that drives wonderfully intimate personal relationships, but also makes him an incredible judge of talent, judge of business opportunities that are all driven by people. I've never seen him in a deep competitive business fight, but I know he's been in them. And these skills, gentlemanly skills and bold and energetic and determined skills, I'm sure are part of what's made him such a successful businessman. I could talk to you about his 45 companies and his thousands and thousands of employees all over the world now. These are the things that attracted Forbes, Forbes Asia and Forbes worldwide to him. But his story, as he's told it, is an incredible one. And if you read the book, which you're all here, so I know you will, you'll find a very rare and unusual candor in this book. The questions that politically minded leaders avoid when people ask them are all answered without provocation in the book. You'll be very surprised at some of the revelations about the things that he's asked to do in his life to succeed, and the things that he did and the things that he didn't do. He's very, very honest about those things. I had but instead of going into a Forbesian detailing of his balance sheet and his holdings and his assets, we do that every year when we create our lists, and we determine how much money he has and how many holdings he has, and again, you can read about that in the book. I've had the honor of spending a week trekking with him in his country, and when you think about a person who is aligned with and identified with and who is in fact the Nepali of Nepalis, this is who this man is. We went trekking not on the Annapurna route or the Everest Base Camp route, but we went to a less known region called Dolpo. And it's not where all the trekkers usually go. It's actually quite demanding, and we'll exchange a few glances because it was really demanding. It was really cold. I mean, we were every night finding our campsites in the dark because it was longer and harder each day than we thought it would be. But Binod never lost his smile, never lost his, this is when Binod stands anywhere. This is it, like this. Only person I know who stands like that is Superman. And even at the end of a terrible hard day, cold, wearing all the clothing that you have, the smile was there, and his determination. You learn a lot about people, any of you who are outdoorsmen and trekkers. You learn a lot spending a week in outdoors with no shelter with someone, and the content and quality of his character are extraordinary, and these are things that have propelled him in business. Relative to the book, we would hike for 4, 5, 6 hours in a day without seeing any people. And 3 or 4 times when we were on this trip, we would come into a tiny village, maybe 8 or 10 structures, a well somewhere far away from a little far away from where these homes were. People immediately recognized him. That he's a rock star. They know him everywhere. One night, actually 2 nights, we went into people's homes, and very demurely and sheepishly, I'm thinking of one night in particular, a woman came, the book has been published in Nepalese for several years. A woman came out of her bedroom. I had no idea whether people could read or write in these villages. She had a dog-eared copy of Binod's book that she keeps by her bedside. And she came out and asked if he would sign it. While we were eating YY noodles, cooked over a fire in her, basically in her backyard. So he's a serious man with a serious love for his country and a serious global mission to be the kind of businessman that he just described. When there are issues in Nepal, and when I was in Nepal, which is about 5 or 6 months ago, the country was recovering from the earthquake in April of 15, a little more than a year ago. When that earthquake happened, you know, it's okay for you to have criticisms of your government. I won't, because it's not my place. But the government was quite immobilized. I think you told me that no one has finished a presidential term in something like 30 prime ministerships. So the government was flat-footed and not able to respond. The entire Chaudhary group, Binod, his sons, Nirwana, who's here today, mobilized immediately and put both enormous amounts of money and energy from their thousands of employees to work immediately to attack the hardest and most severely struck parts of the country, and then embarked on a plan to build homes, to rebuild schools, to do the jobs of that are generally seen for relief organizations, which are also very difficult to put into action quickly. So he, very selflessly and with his family and his resources, came to the aid of the country. While I was in Nepal as well, and we spent the entire time with Binod and the family in the woods and then in Kathmandu, the blockade of the fuel blockade was taking place. There were no shipments of fuel, as Binod described, landlocked, you know, with all the amazing resources the country has, still very reliant on neighbors. And for reasons too complicated to get into here, the fuel had been stopped. People were waiting for hours and hours, not hours and hours, days and days for a few liters of petrol. Everywhere you went, you would see cars lined up and people sitting by their cars, people going home and coming back and getting in their cars and going to the pumps. And I don't know exactly what Binod was doing, but every night when we would finish dinner, he would throw on a jacket and a tie and go to see the Prime Minister and work until the wee hours of the morning to try to find a solution. So I am here today in praise of a great man, and a great man who's written a great book and who has more positive energy than I've ever seen. And it's all captured in, I won't get up and embarrass myself again, but in his stance. You see it all, in his stance and his smile. And one tidbit that you could maybe talk about with these guys, a personal thing as a, not just business. When you were 18 and you were going off to be the chartered accountant, was that before or after you had the #1 single as a pop star? Can you sing a few bars? No, I'm just kidding. But he did have a short career as a singer. And I'm not sure his father thought that was the right career. Anyways, good luck with the book, of course.
Thank you very much. Before we start taking questions, I think I'd just like to get a quick response from both of them, and this is particularly for the youngsters.
again, I go back to the thought of entrepreneurship. In fact, in South Asia, we are perhaps seeing a change, an intergenerational change. A lot of new people wanting to start businesses. The older generations, people who have established businesses, are becoming more cautious as their youngsters come into business because they like to preserve and grow their empires. But a lot of new people are coming in with different ideas. So can both of you, and with your experience across the world, can both of you define what entrepreneurship is going to be like in South Asia? What youngsters should be doing in briefly, and then we will take some questions.
Well, very interestingly, I mean, we both just finished one very exciting event, which was yesterday, organized by the Forbes, and they had very kindly asked me to be one of the judges to select 30 under 30 entrepreneurs with great ideas. They've been doing this, and I'm sure Mike will share more details on this when he speaks, in America for many years, but this was the first time this was initiated in Asia. Out of a long list of some 300, which was extremely difficult to narrow it down to 30, but we did it. You know, we had to be. But reading many of these ideas and accomplishments, one thing that comes out very clearly, and which we were also able to witness physically yesterday, because there were 3 case presentations, and we were put somewhat on the seat of a VC, venture capital, to question and to tear those ideas apart and support same times. I mean, today's youth is completely different. I think they are way ahead of the the times when people like us had to sort of take the pains or make the kind of struggle that we had to do to put together ideas. The whole world is integrated. I was just talking to some of the young students here, and they're so well trained to think right. They have access to technology, ability to understand that life is not easy. You've got to come out with ideas. Today is today is the age of ideas. Earlier, I mean, you probably had to be somebody from a business family, or you had to go to a very well-known B school, or to be operating in an environment which has created a strong enabling support system to support the first-time entrepreneur. But in today's world, no. I mean, we all know the background of Jack Ma. We all know the background of John Com, who comes from Ukraine, from a very, very modest beginning. I think the geographies have lost relevance. The background of the family from where you come has lost relevance. What has become the most critical is the ability to see the world beyond and come up with ideas that's going to prevail. If you are able to do that, resources follow. And that's what I guess Forbes is trying to do, bring these young minds with great ideas in the forefront, so that there is plenty of capital around. If at all there is any limitation, the limitation is of ideas, and taken up by people who have that commitment, that dream to make it happen. So I think it's there. And I'm surprised Singapore, where we are talking today, I mean, I was told yesterday, is probably one of the best examples of how the startups are being supported. I think it's one of the most successful. Rana is here. He actually ran this program, and I can tell you that, my God, I mean, sky is the limit for today's youth. Go for it.
Forbes noticed over the last several years, and the 30 under 30 program began in the United States, and it has been going on for 5 years. And in the last 3 or so years, it's really gained momentum. But we saw a trend taking place that's really rooted in how accessible and democratizing technology is, and particularly the internet. And what we saw was that it wasn't just Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Ma or other well-known names, who were young people who had made it big at an early age because they started a company. But perhaps because of those role models, we noticed that at the best universities, and even before university in some cases, a lot of the smartest, most capable, most creative young people didn't want to go work for an investment bank or an oil company or a multinational packaged goods company. They wanted to start their own business. They wanted to start their own business, or they wanted to work in a business started by a young person and experience the excitement and creativity and trials and tribulations of being an entrepreneur. So we decided that we would recognize young people who were extraordinary and accomplished in amazing ways. In the United States, we did. We chose 30 people under 30 in 20 categories. In Asia, the celebration we had yesterday was 30 under 30 in 10 categories. So there were 300 people in medicine, in entrepreneurship, in financial services, in media, and you name it. And out of that 300 from all over Asia, 150 of these young people showed up at this event yesterday. And we put on an amazing sort of agenda. Really, Rana and Alan and other people are here today that put this event on. I'm amazed that they're still standing. It was a very difficult event to put on, but a very joyous one. But these kids are so excited and so turned on, you wouldn't have to put any kind of event together. Just put them in the room together, and you see these guys, they're so passionate and so excited about what they're doing. So to your question about entrepreneurship and young people in Asia, it is, I think it's the golden age for this. We'll see how it all works out, whether, leaving school early or not going to work at that big company in the long term. We'll see how it turns out. But right now, the dynamic clearly is express yourself, start a business, work in a high-powered, passionate field, be precocious, take chances, get experience on the job with, in some cases, your own company, your friend's company, or a company led by someone you really believe in. So I leave it at that. I think it's the golden age of youthful entrepreneurship in the world and in Asia.
Thanks. I think we could listen to, but I think it's time to turn to the audience, and I hope both of you would be willing to take some questions from the audience. So could you just, whoever's asking, could you introduce yourselves and then tell us to whom your question is addressed to? Can we make a beginning? Any hands?